The gold rush in the Americas. You want to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Well, here you go. First, we start off, why did the Siberians cross the Bering Strait to come to the Americas? It's all because of gold, and that gold was rich in these lands. The Siberians crossed over the Bering Strait into Alaska on down to California in search of gold because they knew gold was here in these lands. There was always talk about gold in the Americas. America has always been the land of milk and honey. This is the reason why the nations came together and said, come, let us cut them off as a people. The Aborigines of America had plenty gold. As you can see on this picture, he throws out much gold to the nation. Much trading had already been going on way before Columbus touched over in the Americas. The Aborigines of America had gold in many forms of different artifacts. Gold to the Aborigines came a dime a dozen, and there was plenty of it. So all the nations came in search of this gold. So they enslaved the people on the land to help locate the gold. The Aborigine people would not give up the location where this gold was located. So many nations searched on their own in search of gold. So when Columbus came, he already knew what he was in search for, and he used everything in his power to locate the gold, using Christianity and death threats to overthrow the people. They would not give up in their search for gold and would use by any means necessary whatever it took to find out the locations of the gold. So he took some of the people of the land dressed in their finest apparel of gold and jewels and took them back to Spain, showing the king and queen the riches of these people. So he enslaved the people to make them and force them to show where the gold was located. So when Columbus journeyed back and forth to the Americas, they came and set up tents and began searching for gold. And when they found gold, many other nations began to start coming into the Americas. And the nations flooded the land in search for gold. By any means necessary, they would not give up in their search for gold. And the settlers began to come over and enslaving the people and destroying the land in search of gold. And this is how the Aborigines became slaves in their own land. The poisoning and witchcraft upon the American Aboriginal people. How were our people taken in captive in their own land? When the European settlers came, they came with liquor and they came with certain potions and medicines. This liquor was called spirits. And when our people drank of it, they were drunken. So they were able to take out the leaders by getting them drunk. And by getting them drunk, they were able to overtake them. On one occasion, this happened during the so-called Thanksgiving. They shared their liquor, which was poison, killing our chiefs and leaders. The story goes that they were killed by blankets. But the truth is, they were killed by potions. Liquor was a big trade in that time, and our people would trade with tobacco and other items. They loved the feeling that the liquor would give them. Our people had never experienced this type of feeling. The settlers knew what this type of drink would do to the people from experience. Water in that time was very contaminated, so the liquor would kill off a lot of parasites and all kind of other diseases. But they began to start poisoning the liquors, and this would kill off so many of our leaders. And when they killed off the leaders, they were able to take over the tribes and take the children. They would even give children liquor so they would not know what's going on. Our people became drunken, and this became opportunity for the settlers to take advantage and to take them captive. And by taking them captive, they took over the land, killing the leaders and taking over the children. And when they took the children became slaves. Still to this day, this is why you see a liquor store on every corner in a black neighborhood. Nothing is new under the sun, and that effect still affects us to this very day. Not only did they set up the liquor stores, but they also set up medical facilities. And in these medical facilities, they will use their other casting of spells by injecting them with diseases and many other forms. It was all planned out, and that plan is still working to this very day.
The story of what housing and other living conditions look like for many Black Americans is pretty bleak, and that's by design. In addition to artists cataloging their very personal experiences, it's been proven that the modern phenomenon of concentrated Black poverty was an intentional government-sponsored institution. This is in part why President Biden issued an executive order back in January, intended to right the historical wrongs Black folks have faced when it comes to housing and home ownership in this country. But first, let's take it back.
The dawn of the 20th century, African Americans in major cities lived scattered throughout the city. They weren't segregated particularly. It's only with the Great Migration of 6 to 7 million African Americans north and west escaping the South, the predominant response of the United States government and state and local governments to the Great Migration was to contain Black people in their own neighborhoods. And HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, was particularly a part of this role. With the precursors to HUD, introduced and encouraged racially restrictive covenants, redlining of every major city where African Americans landed. The federal government was a sponsor of urban renewal, infamously called Negro removal by the great James Baldwin.
Urban renewal, which means moving the Negroes out. It means Negro removal. That is what it means. And the federal government is an accomplice to this fact.
That so-called urban renewal also included a federally sponsored interstate highway system, which was intentionally designed to mow through vibrant Black neighborhoods. Take Miami, for example. 2 highways, I-95 and I-395, bulldoze right through the predominantly Black and low-income Overtown neighborhood, previously called Colored Town during segregation.
The Department of Housing and Urban Development and the federal government writ large in the first 7 decades of the 20th century invested billions of dollars in racial segregation and concentrated poverty. Each time this country created a peculiar institution that subordinated Black people, slavery, Jim Crow, it created and dismantled it. They replaced it with another one. And the iconic Black ghetto, I don't use that as a pejorative, I use it as a descriptor, was a follow-on institution to slavery and Jim Crow. That's the legacy that every new administration inherits.